Hey guys, in the next unit we're going to learn all about parallel lines, these new things called transversals, and how everybody relates to everybody else. So let's start with parallel lines. You should have some background about what those would be. Basically, you could sketch any two lines, right? And the trick is parallel lines do not cross or intersect at any point in time. So they have the same slope. The distance between them doesn't really matter as long as you note they're never going to cross. Now, a transversal is basically any line that can cut through those parallel lines. So I'm going to draw my transversal in red. I could draw it down at an angle like this. I could draw it at an angle perpendicular. I can go this way with it. It really doesn't matter, gang. For the sake of this video, I'm just going to come in at kind of an angle. Just so you can not always assume that it's 90 degrees, okay? So when this transversal intersects these two parallel lines, some really, really cool stuff happens. Lots of things become congruent to one another, and the things that aren't congruent to one another end up being supplementary. So if you don't remember what supplementary means, you might want to go back and check that out, but we're going to talk about all those funky relationships right now. The coolest part is I'm going to give you the names for all the relationships, but basically if the picture doesn't deceive you, in other words, let's look at it like this. If I were to highlight this angle and I said, okay, is there another angle on the picture that looks the same size? Well, some of you might say that it's this one. You might say, well, those two look congruent. And the thing is, if they look congruent in this unit, they pretty much are, okay? And if you look down here, the same thing goes. You might have noticed this one and said, oh, well, I think that one looks the same. And guess what? You would be correct. So now let's talk about all the different relationships that go with that. I didn't want to undo that. Okay, so let me start with the ones that I have colored in, okay? So those ones that are colored in, that relationship is actually called corresponding angles, okay? So let's see if I can spell it. Corresponding angles. And corresponding angles are, of course, congruent. They look the same. They are the same, okay? Corresponding angles are congruent. Now, the way I think about corresponding angles, or the reason they're called that, is because the part of the picture down here where the angle is located corresponds with the part of the picture up here where the angle is located. Okay? So meaning like this, meaning like if your brain just focused here, okay, you would say that that angle is in the upper right of this crisscross, right? It's up in the upper right. Well, if you come up to the top of the picture and do the same thing, the angle is also located in the upper right. So that's how corresponding angles work. You can just imagine it that way. Another way you can think about it is if you were to take your picture and take a pair of scissors and cut it all the way down the middle, okay? So cut your paper on that yellow line. If you were to stack this bottom picture on top of the top picture, things would match. And those things that match are your corresponding angles. Okay, so now let's move on to another one, another relationship, if I can do that. Okay, so I'm going to stick with this little angle that I've shaded, and I'm going to go back to the one I did a second ago, right here. I think a lot of y'all would already know what those are called because we've done it already this year. So remember, anytime two lines cross and you're looking at the inside of that crisscross, those are called vertical angles. So that's not a new one. You may not have to write that down, but vertical angles are also congruent. So that's going to be another keyword. What's another weird one? Okay, another one that you're going to get to look at is if I were to keep this one and shade both of those in. This is kind of like the transitive property because I already said this one and this one are congruent, and then I said this one and this one are congruent, so therefore these two must be congruent. So what do you know? We're using our Unit 2 conditionals to make this work and all those properties. this is an interesting relationship. These two do match, okay? And what these are called is alternate interior angles. Alternate interior. Okay, so what I used to look for, this was my memory trick when I was y'all's age, I would look at my picture and I'd look for the letter Z. And because in my mind, I was like, oh, the inside of the Z's match. Now, those of you that are actually savvy with the English language actually can break it up in your mind and understand that alternate refers to jumping across the transversal. And what about interior? What does interior mean? Well, duh, it means inside, right? So this one's inside the parallel lines. So that's why they're called this. You know, they don't just make up words. They actually have meaning. So alternate across the transversal, but also inside those parallel lines. Okay, cool. So let's see if there's any others that end up congruent. Okay, so let me undo my cool blue mark if I can. Nope. Okay, so let's see. I'm going to keep this one. And what about going back up and linking it back to something else here? Sorry. Okay, so we know those are congruent because of vertical. We know those are alternate interior. What about taking this one over here? Let me undo that. What if I were to shade this and then jump all the way over here? Yikes, right? So it's like the upper right corner and then jump way down here to the lower left. Well, those are technically congruent, right? But the name of it might be hard. Let's see. I went across the transversal, so I could use the word alternate, but I'm on the outside of the parallel lines. So these are called alternate exterior. Hey, what do you know? The antonym of interior is exterior, so we're going to use that word instead. So that's this relationship that you see right here, okay? So feel free to sketch yourself a little drawing and label these up so that you have a good example. Now, beyond just being congruent, there are also a set of angles that end up supplementary. Now, what's supplementary mean? You better know what it means, right? If you don't know what it means, you're having a bad year so far. Supplementary angles, guys, are two angles that have a sum of 180 degrees, right? So they're going to add up to 180. So let's go back to the picture of two random parallel lines. And let's draw a transversal through them, okay? And in fact, I want that to be a little off dead center, just so you can see what's happening, okay? Hopefully you remember things like a straight line is supplementary, right? That's, by the way, I totally botched the spelling. Supplementary. Let's sneak in an AR there. Okay, whatever. So if you look for a straight line, gang, that is going to be supplementary. So you could look at your picture this way and do it. And if you were to like shade this one and this one, you could just call that like a linear pair is what you could call that, okay? Because they're on the same line. Same thing if you were to look at the inside. You could also think of the straight line this way and know that any two angles side by side, like maybe this one and this one, I mean, those are definitely going to add up to 180 because they're on a straight line. But what if we jump across the picture, right? So the ones that I think about for being supplementary would be something like this one here, and then jumping over to, where do I want to go? This one right here. Okay, so this one and this one are going to be supplementary just by using all the rules we talked about before, and there's proofs for it, but this video is not about proving it, it's just showing you the relationships, okay? Now, this one and this one are going to be supplementary, and what these are called is, notice they're on the outside of the parallel lines, so you're going to see the word exterior, and then they're on the same side of that red line. So they're the same side of the transversal, so they're called same side exterior. And those, everybody, are going to have a sum of 180. They add up to 180. Okay, that's their relationship. Don't set them equal to each other. Add them and let them be equal to 180. And then the only other one I can think about is I think it's just the exact opposite. It's like, not alternate exterior, maybe. Or same side interior. Yeah, that's it. Same side interior. So like, I stay on the same side of the transversal, but I come to here and here, okay? So the red ones are called same side interior, and they are also going to have a sum of 180 degrees. So what do you know? Now you know all these little relationships about these angles, and from here you're just going to practice identifying with the vocab which angles are the same, and then maybe some examples after that. Thanks.